Hi, I'm Jeff. This is Tropical Plants at 53 degrees north, and as well as a struggling fudge next to me, you might just be able to see another Hippeastrum in the background there. Quite a new one for me. I'm still going through them, still working through them. I can't remember for the life of me what that one's called. I think it's just come into my head. Yeah, it's blossfeldiae. I think it's a species. So what we're going to talk about today is Pelargoniums. I'm just going to show you a few of my Pelargoniums. I've recently got another couple of Pelargoniums looking good at the moment. Not absolutely at their best. Some of them have actually gone over a little bit. But what we're going to do is have a look at them, discuss their care during the summer months and what you might do with them during the winter, and of course clear up the old Geranium Pelargonium thing. So let's jump in. And we are in. Okay, so we're going to have a little look, first of all, at a couple of new ones that I've got. And it's really difficult for me not to point things out that's changed in the greenhouse. It's been over a week since my last video, and things at this time of year are changing very quickly. But I'm going to try and avoid it, because I'm going to try and keep it to the single topic. Because obviously that is really what, if you clicked on here, you're after, isn't it? So a couple of new ones for me. So this one, not great to look at the moment, but it's called Lavendar Lindy, just as the fogger kicks on. Hopefully that will stop in a second. Lavendar Lindy, why is it called Lavendar Lindy? Because it's a scented leaf pelargonium. So the first thing to talk about as I show you this one is, and I'll try and stick up a picture on the screen of what the bloom actually looks like. A pelargonium is not the same as a geranium. I've put it in the title because I believe, especially in the US, people still call them geraniums incorrectly. I mean, you know, what's in a name, it is what it is, isn't it? Whatever you call it, if you know what you're referring to. But just to be absolutely clear, these are pelargoniums. They are not geraniums. They're not hardy geraniums. The care is completely different. Hardy geraniums, as I've just pointed out by the word hardy, will go below frosty temperatures. They will take a frost. They die down over the winter months, and they have a completely different care regime to these. They are still under the Gesneriaceae family, but they're a different genus altogether. So these are pelargoniums, but as I say, if you come from the US, then you will know it as a geranium, or maybe a tender geranium. So yeah, that's a scented one. And this little one over here, again, not looking great, but it is going to bloom. And this is one of the great things about pelargoniums. They do bloom from being very young. You don't have to wait years. So this is called Silver Glitter. It's a Steller pelargonium. Again, I'll put one of the pictures up. And this one looks really great. I'm really pleased to get this one. So what I'll do, I'll just pop them down there. I'm going to try and pop them up tomorrow if I get a minute after work. And we'll just take you through over to, well, it's not the cool side anymore, because we're in a really nice warm spell at the moment, which will be actually ending today, I believe. We've got some cooler, wet weather coming in tomorrow. So what I'm going to do, we'll just swizzle around here and have a look at some of my pelargoniums and discuss things as we go. So right, we've already cleared up the name, so let's talk about some of the plants that I've got, and then I'll try and introduce some of the care chat as we go along. So what you're looking at here, so this very blousy one here you're looking at is a hybrid, and it's called Kamahl. It's a Regal Pelargonium. So we've got all these different groups of pelargoniums. If you think you know what pelargoniums are, and you go to the nursery and the garden centre and you look at what they've got, believe me, if you get online to a nursery or a place like Fibrex, I think it's in Wales. I always get mixed up between Dibley's and Fibrex. One of them is in Wales, one of them is in England. But they are a specialist. They do one or two other things, but they are a specialist pelargonium business, company, nursery, whatever you want to call it. They have some really stellar ones. And I don't mean stellar pelargoniums. Yes, they do have those. Some really fabulous plants. Nothing at all like you will see in the garden centres. The garden centres and nurseries tend to sell the bog standard. I know this is a bit of a British term. Bog standard meaning just, you know, they're all over the place. They're very common. Just the gaudy bright colours with nothing on them. Here you've got I mean, I love the Regals. The Regals are really nice. But we've also got species here. So this one here is, well, rather than try and remember it, let's have a look at the label. That usually clears things up, doesn't it? So I'll just grab that very quickly. So this one is trifidum. I was going to say trifidum, but every time I say trifidum, I usually get it mixed up with the other one. So that's trifidum. This one is actually, I'm just having a little sniff here. This one is a scented one. I'm not very good with smells. I don't know what it smells of. They all kind of smell of lemon to me. But some of them are supposedly smell of apple. Some of them smell of lavender, which we'll come to. Well, we've just already mentioned that one, haven't we? This one here, another species. This one is longicaule. And I know I've shown it before. This one is quite shy of flowering. It's kind of a sprawling one. I can see why they use these species to create hybrids, because obviously the habit isn't quite as accommodating as some of the cultivars and the hybrids. But I quite like this one, the way I've got it here, just kind of frothy. And this one is, the trifidum is very, very highly floriferous, easy for me to say. And this one just keeps producing them and producing them. I don't even deadhead it. Which takes me to deadheading. Yes, you should deadhead pelargoniums. If it's one of the hybrids, then it's pretty obvious that it's going to need deadheading, which I'll show you in a second. But that will then keep producing them, especially in the summer months. So we're just showing you some of my plants first before we go on to talking about the care. So this one is Eskay Verglo. This is an angel pelargonium. This is another scented one. Yep, lemon as always. All smell like lemon. Moving along here. So this one here looks like another Regal to me. I can't remember the name of that one, but I think it's very similar to the name of this one. Is it something like grandiflorum? I can't find the label on that one. We've got it up here. Let's just go past the nepenthes. It's here again. So this is the same one. I don't really normally like to have duplicates of plants, but it fills a gap at the moment. So that one is Pelargonium Grandiflorum Don Diego. Right, so it's a grandiflorum. So Pelargonium Grandiflorum, this is another one. It's not Don Diego. It's one of these that I've known and forgotten. This one over here is arnside fringed aztec. This one looks fab. One of the great things about this one is that even when the blooms are over, they don't kind of drop off. You normally find pelargoniums are quite messy in as much as like the petals fall off one by one. So this particular little inflorescence here, all the petals, as you can see, just come off in your hand. So that's really handy. If you can see them all, like it's clear that they've gone over, you can follow the stem back and cut the stem back. And these ones are not so far off going over, but they're still looking quite good. Once all that blooming is finished, I'll cut all those stems off. I won't do much else to it, and it will just come back in pretty short amount of time. Another new one over here. So this is another hybrid, and this one is Georgia, another Regal Pelargonium. I really like that one. That's lovely. Well, obviously I do, otherwise I wouldn't have bought it. So that's a Regal. And I've been getting into the Stellers a little bit. If I can get this label back in. So we have another Steller up here, which is, oops, let's just unhook it here. So this one, what's this one? Reniforme? No, St.Elmo's Fire. That's St.Elmo's Fire. This one is a Dwarf Steller. I mean, looking at that, you wouldn't even think it was a Pelargonium. Some of these are scented, I don't even know it. So we've got Reniforme at the back. This one is a species. You can tell again, very small flower for the species. And this chocolate coloured one over here, which does go really nice there. It's supposed to be magenta. I don't know, it looks a bit, it changes depending on the light. It's a bit kind of chocolatey to my eye at the moment. And that one is sidoides. Okay, they look really nice together. So I think that's all my pelargoniums that I've got at the moment. Like I say, I'm just kind of expanding the numbers that I've got in the greenhouse of those at the moment. So let's have a think about looking after them. So what do they like? Well, I think Mediterranean. So these actually come from South Africa. Now, South Africa is a big place, and no doubt they've got various different climates in different places. But it's like they definitely love a Mediterranean style of climate. So that means that during the summer they're going to like sunshine. They like warm temperatures. However, give them something like a Florida kind of temperature where it's really hot for most of the time, and I believe that can be too much. This is what I've heard anyway. I've heard this from various acquaintances who live in those areas, that the pelargoniums do tend to struggle over there. So for me, living in the north of the UK, that is never going to be a problem, even behind glass. I've got enough shading in here for that to not be an issue. And if you live in the UK or a temperate climate, somewhere like this kind of a climate, then You can use them as a house plant, you can have them in a conservatory, you can have them outside in full sun, and that sun is not going to cause them any problem. They're going to absolutely love it. Okay, so as far as temperature goes, they will actually take really low temperatures, surprisingly, and you'll even find that one or two people, even like where I live, if they go and leave a pelargonium in a pot, if it's in a sheltered position, very often it can actually make it through a winter despite frost, snow and so on. Depends how mature it is, depends how sheltered it is, depends what kind of winter we have, but it can make it through. If you definitely want to be certain of making it through, then just bring it into the house or bring it into the greenhouse, give it a little bit of protection and it'll be fine. You can actually chop back everything you can see that's green. You can chop it right back to the base. However, I would definitely recommend leaving some leaves on at the bottom. Chop it back to where there is like a little shoot. You'll see some little shoots further down. If you go beyond that, doesn't mean you've lost it entirely. However, the chances are higher that you will lose it. On the pelargoniums that I've done that to, I've usually been unlucky and it's never come back for me. So I always make sure that there's a little bit of a shoot breaking from bottom, but otherwise you can cut them really, really low down at any time of the year and they are likely to come back. They're fairly slow growing to what I consider slow growing. However, compared to something like an orchid, they're probably like a fly buzzing around. They're pretty quick at blooming. I mean, this one will be over pretty soon. Once it's over, that will be over even more soon. But it's likely to be, forming. In fact, there you go, some buds there. So it's likely to be back in bloom again in a matter of weeks, maybe a couple of weeks, and it'll be back in bloom again. And they'll just keep blooming and blooming for you throughout the season. One tip that I learned through trial and error is that they don't actually like, in pots at least, to get too big. You want them really to be quite small, tight and compact, which is really handy because it means that you can keep buying more and adding more to your collection. But to get them to bloom the best, keep them small, keep them tight, keep them rounded. If you let them get really big in a pot, you'll find that they just produce more and more and more leaves, and then you have fewer and fewer blooms. I did this with a pelargonium. I had it in a pot and I thought, I keep up potting it. I keep potting it into a bigger and bigger pot. I get a bigger plant, I get more blooms. What did I get? No blooms whatsoever, just leaves. So you want to try and avoid that. Try and keep it in a nice compact form. I would definitely advise you to go and have a look onto somewhere like Fibrex or some other specialist seller and see what they've got, because honestly you will see some blooms and some pelargonium flowers, some pelargonium plants that are completely beyond and different to anything that you've seen in a garden centre. Some really, really stunning, gorgeous plants. As far as watering goes, they are really happy with a small amount of water. Practically nothing in winter, just enough to keep them alive every so often. You really want to keep them on the dry side for most of the year, in fact. And what you get if you do overwater them, as I've done here, if you do give them too much water, you'll find that they start to kind of look a little bit washed out like this one. Now I've given this one a little bit too much. I've got the hose pipe on it, and when I've been going round trying to do it really quickly, then I've overdone it and I'm getting this kind of issue here. And Fudge has just grabbed something and run off, so I better go chase him and see what he's up to. Some plants, it seems, just like clay terracotta pots more than others, and I would definitely say, and that's not in one, I would definitely say a pelargonium is one that just seems to like being in a clay pot. I think it's probably something to do with the drainage and the fact that clay tends to pull the moisture out of the soil, so they're not sitting in really wet soil. You can use multi-purpose compost. Try and keep the drainage really good. They don't want to be sitting in water, and I would recommend some kind of peat free. They don't need peat in order to survive. As far as feeding goes, then during the season I give them nothing special, just a general purpose fertilizer. I tend to stick those pellets in that you put in pots. I do that a couple of times, once at the beginning of the season and once somewhere around the middle, and then that's really all they need after that. As far as tidying up goes, if you see yellow leaves, which you very often will, don't get alarmed. Yellow leaves like this, on a plant that is practically evergreen, you'll find that always keep producing these, and you just pull them off. If you don't pull them off, then they just kind of stick around and look a bit unsightly. So just pull them off towards the base of the stem, and then that will keep them looking good. If you get any kind of reddening on the leaves, that can be perhaps they've had a little bit too much sun. Again, nothing to worry about, pull the leaves off. I've found that pelargoniums, they really are very, very tough as far as removing leaves go. You can remove practically as many leaves as you want. Now obviously I'm not talking about completely stripping it bare, but anything that begins to look like it's got some kind of botrytis infection on it, which is something that they can be prone to, then you'll find that spreads really, really quickly. So it's always worth keeping an eye out. Lift your pot up, have a good look underneath, and see if there's anything under there that looks like it might have botrytis, and pull it off. I must confess I don't do that quite as much as I should do, but I know that it's something that I should really keep on top of. As far as humidity goes, they do not like humidity. Now here in the UK we have quite a high humidity, and I have it especially in the greenhouse because I have a fogger that keeps kicking in. So this is why mine perhaps don't look quite as spectacular as they could do if I had it in like a really well ventilated, airy kind of a greenhouse. If I just focused on pelargoniums, then I get rid of the fogger and it would be nice and dry in here, and they would thrive. And this is why they do so well in houses, because houses are of course traditionally very low in humidity. So that's watering, media, what to do with them during the winter, pruning them down. Oh, you can root prune them as well. I do have a video on that. It's an old one, but it does nevertheless show you how to root prune. If yours gets too big, or you found that you think it's in too big a pot, you can very, very easily towards the end of the season take it out of its pot, and you can be very rough with it and prune those roots right down and lever it into a smaller pot, and it will not worry about that, especially if you do it at the end of the season. Because obviously it goes pretty dormant anyway. Not dormant in as much as it doesn't like completely disappear from view. It just really, really slows down to the point of stopping growing, and then you won't have a problem. Now, having said that, because I keep my greenhouse at 18 degrees over in the warm side, I have kept them going right through the winter months, and you can do that. They are perfectly fine doing that. If you go over to the Mediterranean, you'll see some massive pelargoniums, and they flower quite freely, but of course they're not in pots, they're in the ground, so it's a completely different matter when it's in the ground to when it's in a pot. So they're my tips on pelargonium growing. I hope that may have convinced you to have a go at some of these. They are gorgeous, gorgeous plants, and I actually prefer them in the greenhouse or in the house than outside, because you really need to get right up to them to see this kind of detail, I feel. You know, that's my opinion on it. I would definitely recommend. There is a guy called David, I think it's David Taylor, I might be getting the second name wrong, and he has a channel. He's called Mr. Pelargonium, and I've learnt most of my stuff from him. And his channel is all about pelargoniums. He has grown them commercially, and he still shows them, and you know, he's the guy to go to if you want some really in-depth knowledge on pelargoniums. So that's why I'm giving his channel a bit of a plug. Okay, so I hope you enjoyed this quick whiz around my pelargoniums, and I very much like to hear from people in the comments what your experiences of pelargoniums are, if you grow them. And just before I go, I'll just show you this lovely species Streptocarpus. That's saxorum. That's quite pretty, isn't it? I quite like that. I said I wasn't going to do this, but I can't help myself. There's so many lovely things to look at. So for now, I'll see you on the next one. Bye.